Well, hello and welcome to the very quick modding tutorial for this game. Right now modding is only partially implemented and there are some limitations, but you can do a bunch of things which are, um, decently cool, I guess. It's video game modding. Those who like modding games, well, you can do it. So the thing that's available to you is this whole thing, and it contains, in your case it contains here the jar file for the game plus all the assets that are loaded from inside the same folder, and you can modify most of these assets, and those modifications will show up in the game. Let's talk about first of all, let's talk about very simple just file replacement that you can do. For example, here in the sound effects, you can take your own attack WAV file and replace this WAV file here, and your own sound will play. So every one of these files, as long as you place the same name, they'll replace the action that they do. Some of these files are actually not utilized by the game, but for example, um, you know, the, some of the talk sounds,
私メンヘラじゃないんだけどな。
you can just simply replace them with your own talk sounds. You simply name your talk sound talk 0.12 and it will replace. And the same thing for all files here. Unfortunately, and this is why I stated modding is only partially implemented, you can't add your own files, you can only replace existing files. Both in sound, in music, that applies as well. Alright, and in sprites, yeah, sprites a bit more difficult because sprites are in things called sprite atlases, and I think, I'm not sure, but if you use the GDX texture packer tool, you can actually unpack these file atlases and of course put your own file atlases here, and as long as the files have the same name, they will show up as the things. For example, here you could edit, for example, the intro screen here, change it by your own intro screen with the same dimensions and the same name, and it will appear your own intro screen. Let me just load up the tool that you need to utilize to load those atlases and stuff. I'll censor, of course, my personal data. Do not worry about it. Give me a second, will ya? I'll cut. Alright, so you'll have this thing that's called GDX Texture Packer. You can download it from the GDX website, I think. And you just run it. It will open up. And I think you can just open atlases from here. That's a good question. That is a really good question. See, you have the texture unpacker, and you simply go into the file where the atlas is, and you put the atlas in here, and it output the files that are inside the atlas, and then working. Right, I think you should figure out how to use this tool yourself. I don't think it's too difficult. So basically you set up the tool and you export with the same name, the same name that is in the folder. You export it to the folder, and then the file names that are here, you need to have the same file names as they are in the original files. For example, the title screen file is called Pray2, and so you make a file named Pray2 and pack it as big unnamed.atlas into the correct directory, the atlas directory on your game folder. And if you replace things here, they'll be replacing games. Just make sure to keep the same dimensions, otherwise weird stuff will happen. But we can actually go a bit further than just modding sounds and modding audio. we can edit these info files that exist everywhere, and we can get in some weirder things, like editing and changing dialogues, uh, changing game objects, hitboxes. The hitboxes are going to be completely replaced, so I'm not going to teach you how to mod these hitboxes because it's pretty much useless, since in the next update I hope to have these hitboxes completely removed and changed by something that's more performant and more better good. So let's go into map editing before we get into file editing. So each tile, let's grab a reasonably simple map, your spawn cave, for example. It should open up in GIMP. Here it is. Uh-oh. What did you do? Give me a second. Worry not. Censorship. Alright, here we are. GIMP. GIMP was already opened on my other desktop, that's why it made this jump here. But alright, you simply take the colors, that are in the map, and this represents, for example, that dirty water, and this represents cave walls and doors and stuff like that. And it's very simple. You simply make a BMP that needs to be 4x4, a 4x4, 4 width, 4 height BMP, and with only recognized colors, and all the recognized colors are represented on these BMP files, those that do not have an S in the end, because files with an S in the end are a different kind of file, but each map has its name and has its file. Unfortunately, you cannot add your own files yet. You can only replace files that are already existent, but for example, you make a different file that you call spawn cave, and as long as all its colors are recognized, it will load unique tiles. For example, I can take, okay, let's open another image. Alright, it opened here. You see, this like grayish color is road, right? And I could paint a road inside this BMP, and when you export the BMP and you export it as a RGB 8-bit BMP, RHE8B8, export it as a BMP, and if you change the colors here, it will change the tiles that load, and it will load hitboxes and sprites for you. So it's basically a very simple tile map editor that I made myself. The program reads BMP files. Yeah, it's really simple indeed. And we also have besides BMP files, we have the BMP files with the same name but it ends in S, and these tell what mobs are spawning. And unfortunately, it is another limitation of the engine right now. You can't really change the amount of mobs that spawn or what mobs spawn. I mean, you can. No, you can, but for example, here we need to look at other files, the info files, that they tell things about the map that cannot be told just by the tile map BMP. And there's a format to the info files in this game. You have a number in the top that is the length of the file, so there are 8 lines, 8 information lines, and you need to tell the program that are 8 information lines, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 lines, and you tell it, hey, here are 8 lines for you to read. The 0 is necessary, otherwise the program will crash, which is not very wholesome. And so this has commands that tell the game what to put in the zone. You see, char and its arguments tell the game to spawn a character, Suisei. So it will load the Suisei sprite with the name Suisei for a dialogue. And you tell it to load the dialogue. In this case, it will load Suisei A, which is here in the dialogue folder. So if you need to add dialogues, you can't add dialogues right now. It won't work, but if you could, you had to create a dialogue here. But for example, if you change the Suisei A dialog, we'll get to that later, it will change the Suisei A dialog in the character response. So you tell the name of the character, that dialog it will be using, the coordinates, the grid coordinates 3512, the local coordinates 1216, and I'm gonna be honest, I forgot what that 0 does, but I've used 0 in all characters and it works fine. How do you forget your own API? I don't know, but I could just look at the code and I would know what this 0 does, but it does something. Oh no, I know. It tells, I think it just tells the program which dialogue, tree to initiate it to. We'll talk about dialogues later and how the dialogue trees work. And so it's the second command, game obj, tells the game to spawn a game object. In this case, the game object web on the ground. It will spawn web on the ground. If you don't give a valid game object, it will crash. And what's a valid game object? A game object is a valid game object is a game object that's declared in this object list info. And to declare an object, of course, you must always, tell the program the amount of lines you have, otherwise it will, you guessed it, crash, and you need to be perfect. If you miss one or go one above, it will crash. It's a limitation, and that makes modding a bit difficult, and it will have to be fixed. And I myself got fucking just destroyed by this stupid number several times, and when I'm able to update the file reading algorithm I made, things will be amazing. So you can actually declare custom game objects. If you want a different game object, for example, you want to make a mannequin, right? You need to go here and name mannequin, so basically declare the name of the object. And so the name you declare here is a name that you'll have to utilize in these spawn commands. So let's imagine, we name mannequin, right? And this name though has a trick. It isn't easy because you need to load a sprite in. So this is where Atlas modding would come in if you could put your own custom sprites, but unfortunately you cannot for now put your own custom sprites. That's why I say that the modeling is only partially implemented, so you actually couldn't create your own game object, because you'd need to create in this unnamed.png, this unnamed atlas, you'd need to make a sprite and call it mannequin, and this would try and load the mannequin sprite from the texture atlas. Unfortunately, then after that the game would need to load that texture into memory, and right now it cannot dynamically load textures. You need to actually tell it inside the game code, inside the source code. You need to tell it manually to load a determined texture, which is admittedly bad, and it will need to be fixed, and it will be fixed eventually. So you cannot create new objects. You can only modify existing ones. Like, you could change the web on the ground sprite that is in the atlas, and then web on the ground would load a different sprite, and that's the max that you can do. But yeah, the object declaration is in this file, and it tells some info about the object. It says what type of object it is. A solid object cannot be interacted with. A closet can be interacted with and can do certain actions. And the stash also is a different type. So it's the name of the object and then some information. The type of the object, and then the width of the object, the height of the object, and another number that I forgot, but I'm sure it does something. Oh my, I'm really a sleazy developer. Well, it doesn't matter, you just game object an object on the object list, and it will create an object. So this thing you can actually modify yourself. You can spawn how many game objects you want inside the map. You can mod that in. You just need to, of course, give each object different coordinates. I don't know what happens when you give different game objects the same coordinates, and I don't want to find out. But this is just declaring the physical game object. That's no logic in it yet. So after declare the game object with game obj command, and the commands are in between parentheses, right, with commas separating the arguments, and a C-style Terminator sequence. You know, the dot with a comma in it. And yeah, and you can only do one line at a time, so you do a command and then you press a new line and put another command. Otherwise, you know, the file reader of the program is not smart enough, so it needs to be in this format. And if it is in a different format, it will give an error message that can sound quite nonsensical, like array out of bounds or something weird like that. And yeah, so you need to be careful when editing these files, because they have zero debugging in them, zero debugging. And then you have to declare the logic of the game object by interactable game object, this command. And /give tells the game object to give an item, and then you declare what item to give. In this case, it's an item called ragged t-shirt, which is also in a list, which is here, the equilist info, with a list of all game objects and their characteristics, and we'll get to that. So it tells this game object to give a ragged t-shirt, and this is called a special argument. You do /null if you don't want a special argument. Special argument is utilized sometimes. For example, let's talk about an example where a special argument is utilized in the spawn cave. Spawn cave is this first area. You know, after the intro, when you talk with Mio locked in that room with a bed. And here we have a special argument, which is /condition /cond, and this basically tells the game object to wait for a special condition to be reached before it gives you the game object. And that is why the closet in the first level, when you press F on it the first time, tells you that you didn't find anything. But after talking with Mio for the first time, when you go back to the closet and press F, it will give you the toy key. And this is basically the working of /cond, and of course the dialog file for Mio A, which is the Mio that we are loading in the first map. Alright, let's go on. It's really quick, and this is only for maps that have enemies in them. You know, you need to declare how many enemies you want to declare by saying eArray, basically starting the enemy array, and you tell the size, eArray 4, give me 4 enemies, and then you have to declare the enemies with eAdd. So first we add an angry dustman. As I was saying, you can declare what enemies you want to spawn in the zone by eAdd and the enemy name, and you guessed it, the enemy name is also declared in a list, the enemy list that defines all the enemies. And because enemies do not load in sprites, I think you can just add enemies through here. So I think you can add your own custom enemies. And you may, and the size of the array, you know, before we get into the enemy list, the size of the array is connected with the map files that end with an S, Deadwood Paths, which is connected to Deadwood Path. You know, you can see certain maps have special colors in them, you know, red, yellow, green, blue. And here is the thing, each color is the spawn area of an enemy. So the red area is the spawn area for the first enemy, the yellow area is the spawn area for the second enemy, the green area is the spawn area for the third enemy, and so on and so forth. I just found out that I don't have my mouse pointer on, and so when I was pointing at things, they weren't showing up. I'll correct this from now on, give me a second. It's fixed. I'm sorry for my inability. So I think these zone files have been explained apart from one thing, which is intelligent tiles. Right now, intelligent or interactable tiles have to be defined also by this definition file. So interactable tiles are right now things like doors. Doors are tiles that you declare in the map, uh, but those doors, you don't declare any info about them. You just say here is a door. You don't add more about what the door does. And so this is what this command does. When you add a door, which is these great things are iron doors that need keys to be unlocked. When you add a door, you need to tell what opens the door and what door are you referring to. And so the map loads its tiles down up, right? Like this, left to right, down up. And so the first door, or the door 0, as it's known in computing counting, so 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, that's how the computer counts those doors. And so door 0, we want for the toy key to open it. Door 1, we also want a toy key to open it. And door 2, we also want a toy key to open it. But then these other 3 doors, or 3, door 4, and door 5, we want a rusty key to open them. And that's why I declare interactable tile state for the tile 0, which the door 0, open with the toy key. This is basically with what we are saying in this object, in this thing. So whenever you add a door, an interactable door that needs a key, you need to declare them on interactable tile state. Otherwise, they will not work as intended. And there's also, for the interactable game object, there's another command I will teach you. I mean, you could certainly after what I already told you about the int game object, you could have already understood, but I'll just say you can use the /gold command to give gold from the thing instead of giving equipment. So you do /gold plus the amount of gold plus /null, unless you want to add conditions. Alright, speaking of conditions, we talked about that closet on the first true level, and how the closet only gives you something if a certain condition is reached, which is because of this dialogue tree. So we'll now debate the dialogue trees. Dialogue trees are also completely modifiable, almost. So you can change the dialogue. You could actually even translate dialogue, but it would have to be translated to Romanji instead of actual hiragana and kanji, because of limitations in the way I made fonts, the bitmap fonts and the true fonts and so on and so forth. The game cannot load Chinese type fonts, and so that can be fixed. But right now, if you try and translate this Japanese and translate it using these characters, they won't appear. So if you want to translate, you'll have to translate for now using Romanji. So anyways, let's get into the technical details of this dialogue. As always, the number of arguments for now is always necessary to declare how many lines you have, otherwise the game won't be able to read it. And then this is just a bit redundant, but it's defining the character, defining the dialogue name as Mio A. Even though the name is already Mio A, it has a double redundancy here, saying that the name is Mio A. And now we get into the dialogue trees. So each define statement, like each bits of dialogue, it's a bunch of dialogue adds, adds, that are encapsulated between a define and a definalize. You see define because it's both defining dialogue and dialogue define, which is funny acronym. So you define, and the number, of the dialogue array. What does this mean? Alright, this means that this is dialogue tree number 0. Dialogue tree number 0 is this, between the define 0 and the definalize. And then dialogue tree 1 is between the define 1 and this definalize. And this is how to declare dialogue trees. And why are dialogue trees important? Because the only way to add choices and jumping between certain parts of dialogue is with a jump command, which is, for example, here in this choice, you can de-add normal dialogue. Let's first talk about the usual, not extended command. So de-add tells the game to add a piece of dialogue, and 60 is the speed of the dialogue. The higher, the slower the dialogue will be, and the lower, the faster the dialogue will be. So speed and then command. This is a command. Right now this command is acting like who is saying this. /m means mob, so the mob will be saying this, and /p means player, so the player will be saying this. So the mob will be saying the things in front. So a line of text is defined as an argument. When you use a comma to declare another argument, you are declaring another line of dialogue. And this is, of course, in /mob and /player modes, which is, actual dialogue that appears to the player while he's playing. So by doing define 60 /m, hello Matsuri-chan, have you slept well? We are making the mob, which is Mio, say hello Matsuri-chan, and then end line, have you slept well? And close the parentheses, use the point and a comma, and that's the declaration of a piece of dialogue. And then the response will have to be declared by adding another piece of dialogue. We add a player dialogue where the player, Matsuri, just says hum, and so on and so forth. And this is how you add dialogue. And you can actually add dialogue since it's not loading any sprites. You can add as much dialogue, you can change dialogue, and so on and so forth. And only certain kinds of characters can be used, for example, otherwise it will crash. Not too bad, but this standard dialogue, mob to say this, players say this. You can only have 3 lines, I would say. If you have more than 3 lines, the text will go out of the dialog box. I mean, you can do it, but it's a bit ugly, and after some time the text will actually break line outside of the camera view, and that's no good. That's no good. Anyway, special commands. Instead of using mob or player, you can de-add 0, which you want to define time as 0 when you are doing a special command. 0/c. So this is telling the dialogue interpreter that is inside the program, the dialogue interpreter that I wrote will recognize this as a different command. It will recognize this as the choice command and will start a choice. So the first argument after the command will be the title, and the title will be read non-battle tutorial. And then it will be the choices that appear to the player, yes, no, and if you don't want the choice to appear, you do /null, and no choice will appear. And then after three visual things to the player, you declare the actions that will happen. So to yes, choosing yes means the dialogue will jump to 1. Saying no means the dialogue will jump to 2. And since this is null, you need to declare also what happens as null. So this is what appears to the player, and this is the action that the game makes inside of game logic. So what jump 1 means? Jump 1 means the dialogue will jump from the tree that it's at. Right now it's at tree 0, and it will jump to the beginning of tree 1 here on define 1. So if we choose yes, Mio will start the dialogue tree number 1 instead of number 0, and it will say alright, I understand, and so on and so forth. But if you choose no, it will jump straight to the second, which useful. useful. And then there's also another command, which is you can just tell the game to jump. For example, here, after the end of this tree, we say to jump to the tree, and it will jump to the tree, the tree 3, the dialogue tree number 3. We're using a jump command instead of a choice command, so you can directly utilize jump to dialogue 3. Alright, but now we have two other special commands, which is command /kill, and that will automatically, it will just kill the mob. It will make the mob disappear. So after this dialogue, Mio disappears, and we need to tell the game to make Mio disappear. So we say add 0, /kill, and it will kill the mob. The NPC will be disappeared out of the game world. And of course, but after we kill, we also want to make sure the player can get the toy key to get out of that room. So you need to /activate the closet that is named toy key. So here, when we make the item, that opens the door toy key, alright, this is basically telling to activate the closet that needs a toy key, that gives a toy key, right? So I was actually looking at the wrong code, it's here, the give toy key. So it will search for a closet that gives out a toy key, and it will change its state into activated state. So it goes from the state of not letting you get the object to the state of letting you get the object. It activates it. So right now this activate command is only utilized here, but probably it will be utilized in other things further on. And I don't think there are any other special commands that are being utilized. Oh, no, I'm lying. There is indeed a special command here. So there's the command /set and the command /full heal. /full heal will, you guessed it, fully heal the player. And /set1 it's basically jump 1, but when you jump to a dialogue tree, the dialogue will go on. But /set forces the player out of dialogue, but tells the game engine to remember that next time the player starts a dialogue, it will start at dialogue tree number 1. So when you first speak with Susei B, when Susei B is the Susei in the lake, right, that gives you a heal, and you first speak to her, she'll tell you all this stuff, right? But when you talk to her again, she will just go straight to the heal thing, because we are setting our dialogue tree as 1. And full heal will fully heal. And I think there's another one, which is Mio B. What did I do? Wait. We are back. And then there's this one called Mio B. And that's another command, a very special command that it's very difficult to use even for me, which MS, which means mob skip, right? It says mob skip to this command, which is sound effect and another thing I forgot. Play sound effect vine boom. And this is what makes the vine boom sound effect play. It uses a weird thing about skipping forward and then returning. And it's weird things, weird booleans that are at work here. But you can add the vine boom sound effect like this. Isn't that cool? It's hella cool. And so on. And so forth. And so dialogue is finished. Maps have been explained. Music, sound. I'm not going to talk about hitboxes, like I said. The lists are mostly explained. The only list that we still need to explain is the enemy list and the equipment list. So let's talk about them. The enemy list and the equipment list. The enemy list is defined. We define the HP of the body parts of the enemy. and then we define the enemy, the name, the I have like a small notepad thing explaining what all these arguments do, because it's a lot of arguments. So you then have main HP, and you have a value, weird value here, 20. It does something. And then you have attack, defense, charm attack and charm defense that are not utilized right now, so they are all defined as 0. And then you have, I think it's the dexterity of the enemy, and then a bunch of other values that are 0, which I think it's the intelligence level, because the AI will have different intelligence levels, but right now the AI only has one intelligence level, which is 0, and then another value that is 0. I'm sure it's 0 for a good reason. And then I think this is like the speed of the enemy when it is, doing something, when the enemy is defending. And then this is like the time it takes for the enemy to rethink its actions, I think. And this is the amount of time the enemy takes to attack you when you are defending. And this is the amount of experience the enemy gives. And this is the minimum amount of gold, and this is the maximum amount of gold. Alright, and now you can make your own enemies like I did them. Great. Awesome. Into the next one, which is equipment. You give the name, and then when you give equipment and stuff like that, you need to call this name for the game to recognize what you are calling, and then the description that appears when you hover over that equipment. And then the sprite, which you can't add sprites right now, so it's a bit useless, but the sprite cat headband, we are going to load the sprite cat headband. And now the stats. It will give you 0 attack, give you 0 defense, give you 0 something else. No, 0 charm attack. I mean, charm's not being utilized right now. 2 charm attack, because I made this item when I was still thinking about adding charm. And then charm attack, charm defense, and then there's like other things. It does other things, it's about, dexterity and stuff like that. It doesn't matter. And then the max HP, the current HP, and the amount of accuracy it gives you. If it is -1, it tells the game that this isn't supposed to give or take accuracy. And null means, the type of weapon it is. Since this isn't a weapon, it's null. But for example, it tells the game to draw either a square or a circle as your sight, as your target reticule during battles, which is when you have weapons, different reticules should appear. Alright, so this is the, oh my eyes, very quick explanation of how to add equipment. You can also add items, name, description, and then instead of using eadd, use iadd from item add, and it's item add, the name of the sprite and the type, which is a key. Alright, I think it's done. I think we are done. Last thing, it's save files. You can use them to save scum and cheat and stuff like that. It tells you what to equip, where, in what equipment slot, the thing to equip, and the health of the thing, right? And this is right. Inventory size is ignored right now, and then your position, your grid position, I think 14, 12, and then what zone you are, what stats you have. You can reverse engineer these stats when you fucking do it yourself. And your HP, maximum HP, actual HP, and the HP of like your head and so on, all your body parts. and player extended. It has some like extended stats and stuff. I think it's like experience level and gold. um Alright, and this is telling information to each zone. So cell zone 0, it's telling that zone 0 will have these things that are changed to it. Zone 0 has nothing interactable, so it does nothing. But here, cell zone 1 and then zone finalize. So for the zone number 1, it kills the game object 0. Right, for this is a save. Alright, you can do it. So this is basically telling the save, when you load the save, it will kill the game object 0. It will change the state of the game object 3 to 2. It will kill the game object 4. It will change the state of the tile 0 to 2. And so on. And so all for the other things. And of course, this changed the state of the mob dialogue, and this is it. Amazing save system. Really well done. I really like the coder who did it. So yeah, I think I've run out. My voice has run out, and I've run out of Steam near the end. But I think most modding things you can do to the engine have been explained. Go forth and do things. I don't know. I don't think it's that interesting still. Maybe in a later update this game will be interesting. But see ya, subscribe and shit.